Welcome back to Humans in AI. I have the honor of hosting Vinod Khosla with me. Vinod, thank you for taking the time.
Happy to be here.
So let's start with your seminal AI paper that at least I've read 10 times, and I'm inspired with the reality you talk about. So I want to start with one of the things you brought up there is we'll have to redefine what it means to be human. Can you share in your own words what you mean by that?
So, believe it or not, I did a year 2000 interview in the New York Times where I first used the phrase in 2000. Humans have always focused on one thing through most of human history, which is survival. And more recently, sort of getting ahead, where the bigger house, the bigger car, more money to spend, or how you establish your value. I think in the world AI leads us to, we will have to rethink what provides meaning in life. So imagine almost everything you consume, all healthcare, all education, all entertainment, all transportation is near free. And I think we are well within 25 years of this picture where nobody needs a job. And no jobs may exist. Both. The question of what defines meaning becomes one of the more important ones. In how do we define ourselves? What do we strive for? And I do think it won't be a bigger title in a corporation, absolute abundance, hugely deflationary economy, and sort of how do you get meaning? Now, some things will be there, competition, so sports, still huge, even more so. And we've turned even video games into esports, and influencers, creators, that's all status stuff. So humans will strive for status. Humans will strive for competition. Humans will pick areas they can get better at, not just areas that can get them an income. Most of my life, when a kid asks me, what should I do? And they generally have advice, follow your passion. I always say that's really bad advice unless you're willing to be an artist and give up having to pay, being able to pay for your kids to go to college. So survival and providing for your family comes first and passion comes second. So be pragmatic about what you get passionate about. I think that limitation will go away. You can be an artist, you can be a musician, even if you're not a very good one, and you can't earn an income from that because you enjoy it. So I do think humans will be much more free to do what they really want for the first time in history and pursue their passions without the constraint of having to provide for a family, because there'll be sufficient abundance.
So humans will be able to do what they've always dreamt to do, right?
Yeah.
You always champion contrarian thinking. You bet on things even before people can figure out. They might say, what did Vinod do? So what's a contrarian belief you hold today? You are the first one to bet on OpenAI and many other things. Fast forward today. So what's one thing that you are seeing that our audience can benefit from and you could encourage them?
2018, when we invested in OpenAI, people thought it was silly. $1 billion valuation for some subsidiary of a nonprofit that had no product plans, no technology plans, no revenue plans. Now with the rumored $300 billion valuation, it looks a little smarter than it did back then. In fact, that one investment, which was twice the largest initial investment I've ever made in the 40 years I've been doing venture capital, twice, is the only time in my history, in the 20 years of Khosla Ventures, that I actually sent an apology letter to our LPs.
Wow.
only investment I've ever spent an apology letter saying it looks ridiculous, makes no sense, we're going to do it anyway, sorry. Today, everybody believes, or most people believe, LLMs will do everything. Some version of LLMs. And, obviously we're very close to OpenAI and Sam, but I can talk to Anthropic or others, and they'll say LLMs will do anything. I personally believe other architectures, radically different architectures, non-transformer architectures will have a large role to play. So neurosymbolic computing. So we have a startup using category theory to take a very different approach to AGI and reasoning systems. We invested in that a couple of years ago, 2 years ago. I've always believed even if LLMs do everything, there will be things other architectures do smarter, faster, cheaper. LLMs can multiply two numbers, and they do a reasonable job and they'll get better. But why not use a calculator at 1/100th the cost? Right? Simple example. LLMs will take a lot more computing to multiply two three-digit numbers. And even if they always get it right, which isn't the case today.
But you are saying there's many, many things you are seeing on the horizon, and you're only encouraging people to think out of the box and not be copycats.
Yes, and we can come back to DeepSeek, but that's an example of that kind of thing. The second more profound thing I have a hard time getting people to believe is that nobody will have enough abundance. Nobody needs a job to get an income. Right? I have a hard time getting people to believe, when I wrote this AI dystopia or utopia paper, one of my statements is, in a world where a farm worker can have the expertise of an oncologist, how do you pay people? You pay them the same? Because both are upgraded to the level of an AI oncologist. One went to med school for 10 years. That's now mostly obsolete. You have a chat interface with your AGI, and the farm worker can do the same.
Yep.
Why should one get $20 an hour or $10 an hour and another get hundreds of dollars an hour? So the structure of society today is going to have to change pretty dramatically. That's the other large thing people don't believe. And people don't believe most people will need jobs, and people who do jobs will want to do the jobs. I will keep wanting to do what I do, even if an AI is doing it better than I can, because I have fun with it. And by the way, the other point I make in my AI dystopia or utopia paper, and I address dystopia first before I get to utopia. Utopia is hard to believe, but people would like it. Yep. The dystopian part, the good news in my paper is dystopia will be a choice for society to make. And that comes through policy and legislation, what's allowed and what's not. Most of the stuff that's dystopic that people talk about, most, not all, can be addressed. And I believe the difference in governance of AI will be dramatically different by country. And countries will make more or less progress based on how they approach both the utopia part and the dystopia part.
So shifting gears, right? Like, given that you still think, and I agree, there's a lot of innovation to happen. What's your take on what DeepSeek does for the AI ecosystem?
So one thing DeepSeek does, is one thing I was very afraid of, is the Chinese will rip off US technology, and there's a fair amount of illegal use. Open source is great, but when you do things illegally, and I suspect, I can't prove it, there's a fair amount of illegal ripoff in DeepSeek. And then there's a couple of really great hacks in there. So shortcuts, we are all used to doing that in software. You hack something and they've done a pretty good job. And then they've also innovated in interesting ways. And that's sort of the good part of DeepSeek. They've added certain types of innovative approaches and opened up one of these avenues of how to do models. And everybody, whether they're closed source or open source, will follow these ideas. Will be a milestone in giving people permission to say you don't need a 10,000 GPU cluster, $1 billion of compute to train a model. You can get creative. So it's permission to be creative, and people will think of 10 other very different from DeepSeek ways to do these same things. And that's encouraging.
And you and I both know, right? Like sometimes necessity is the motherhood of all inventions. And both of us have talked about innovation at the bottom of the pyramid. So when you don't have money, you get forced to innovate. But you're absolutely right with what the US companies have done and with these open source things. You don't need to reinvent the wheel. Take what they are good at, but acknowledge their IP. Right? You can't just take it, right?
The thing I like to say is most people are limited not by what they can do, but by what they think they can do. And once DeepSeek has proven you can build models very differently than the big guys, it allows for 10 other different ideas to flourish. And this is what I mean by you free up people to think more broadly. Once they do, they'll come up with the innovations.
You have been doing venture capital for 40 years and in entrepreneurship before that. I think you're probably the only venture capitalist I know who is more active than any of us, who has seen every cycle from the PC revolution or even the mini computers, right? So where do you think we are in this AI cycle? Where are we? People say it's overhyped. Is it just the beginning? Some people say valuations are high.
I do think in the short term, AI is overhyped, but in the long term, AI is grossly underhyped. And most people can't imagine the world that can exist because it's a failure of imagination. And I do think people, 20 years from now will be shocked at the number of things that can change. Some people would say much faster than 20, say 10. The strategic thing is we are on the exponential capability curve, which will result in exponential curve. I do believe, today there's an assumption of 2% GDP growth in most of the Western world. I do think it can accelerate to 5% or more, even 8% or more. Real GDP growth, and I think that will shock people.
Now, Vinod, I completely agree with you. Love your optimism, yet the realism with it, and the message to humans, not just founders. So really want to thank you.
Well, thank you. It's been a great partnership. I always say optimism is the right thing. Skeptics never did them possible.